What's up, YouTube? I'm going to try and make this video real short, aiming for 5 minutes. I'm going to try not to go on a rant. It's on Facebook. My Mustang pages pops up. Scroll on my news feed, and I see a head gasket question. And I gotta say, I am so tired of seeing the misconceptions of a standard style head gasket compared to an M.L.S. Now, M.L.S. multi-layered steel gasket, so it's got layers of steel layer gasket, usually 3 layers. You can get them in a thinner compressed thickness than you can a standard gasket. For instance, small block Ford, it's like 27 thousandths compressed for M.L.S. For a standard gasket, I want to say 34 thousandths. Might not sound like much, but it can make a slight difference in compression. I've ran standard gaskets on this 9-second 302 for years. Since it's been in this car, it's had a standard gasket. This motor was actually in another car I had. I had aluminum heads on it. I did use M.L.S. gaskets because I was trying to get the max compression I could out of it. Now, that being said, I didn't care about it staying together. It wasn't about not blowing the gasket. It was about me wanting compression. That's it. Literally it. If you're having head gasket failure with a standard style gasket, you have a problem somewhere in your tune, or you have a problem that you might not know is happening, but it is tune related. Could be a faulty spark plug wire that's intermittent. Could be something stupid like that. Could be a stuck shut injector, or maybe it's not firing or pulsing correctly. It could be the stupidest little thing to make a cylinder where it's popping the gasket. Gaskets don't usually fail unless something fails to make the gasket fail. For instance, if you overheat your engine, pops a head gasket. The engine overheated, that's your failure, and the head gasket just gave way. It's not the gasket itself. You had a problem. That's what I'm trying to make as my point. There's a problem that lies behind head gasket failure. It could be a bad deck surface. Jeeps have a problem with head gaskets, the newer ones, like 90, shouldn't say newer, they're old now, but 96 and up. From what I've been told, the straight sixes have a problem with head gaskets. The older ones are great. Personally, I can't say because I never ran a 96 Jeep, but I know my 94 Jeep, I drove that thing with no belt on it for probably 5 or 8 miles, and I put a belt back on it and it was fine. I couldn't believe it. And it was like a 90-degree day out too. Not that that really matters, but it doesn't make it any better. But my point is there's a failure to why the head gasket failed. Now, the most boost I've ever ran through something is 20 pounds. So maybe you boost guys when you hit a certain PSI. Maybe it pushes the head away. But from what my knowledge is it's tune related usually when you pop gaskets. Nitrous. No amount of nitrous pressure through an engine is going to make a head where it tries to separate. It's burnt. So it's tune related. If you have a nitrous car and you're popping head gaskets, that is tune related. Now the bad things about a M.L.S. gasket is there is no give point. They're made to actually separate and lift So that way pressure can escape if you have a problem, and then made to reseal. After so many times, it's not going to reseal, but that's what the theory is behind an M.L.S. gasket. That's what they do. If you're using head studs, that clamping pressure is going to hold that down even tighter. If you're using a factory bolt, that factory bolt is torque to yield. It's going to stretch the bolt. Then you're not going to be seated correctly. It's not going to be torqued correctly. So you want to use like an ARP head bolt if you're going to use bolts. Now I've used studs with M.L.S. gaskets. Like I said, I wanted the compression, and I think I got the studs for free, so I didn't care. I used what I had. Doesn't necessarily make it right for what I believe in, because I believe bolts and standard gaskets. And that's what's been on this car, this Mustang. When it went to 9s and the 10s, it had standard gaskets, head bolts. Here's why. It's an old school theory. That gasket is a fuse. It is a point of failure for if something happens, if your tune's off, it pops that gasket and it doesn't hurt anything else. Best case scenario. Now, you got times where you just totally wreck stuff. So far, thank God, I've only had that happen one time. And that was a valve spring issue. That was something completely, that was valve train related. It wasn't gasket failure. But I've seen cars where they torch the head. They'll blow a hole in the side of the head the size of a baseball. Whole head will be just torched. Seen guys hit the block where it nipped the block and broke it. Seen a couple. It's ugly. It's not nice. More common on a aluminum headed setup. You could break pistons, piston rings, all of that. I'm over my 5-minute mark. But this is important for you guys to understand that an M.L.S. gasket, especially using a stud, you have no fuse. That detonation once out, and it's beating your piston, beating the head. It's doing this off your head, piston. It's just hitting wherever it can, torching. So whatever gives away first when you torch it, that's where it's going. So you might break a piston, have to put pistons in it. Might break a head, have to put heads on it, which if you got a set of 11Rs or trick flows or AFRs or SVEs, whatever, you're talking $1,000, $2,000 set of heads and gaskets. And that's if you don't hurt nothing else. Opposed to a $40 gasket. I don't know, a $40 gasket sounds a lot better to me than $3,000 worth of damage. It's an old school way to look at it. I mean, this is what the old school guys, I used to hear them say, and coming up with that and seeing some of the stuff I've seen and using what I've used. I can put it to you this way, a 9-second car does not need M.L.S. gaskets in it. Unless you're pushing something ragged edge to make it go 9s. And like really, I mean, you really got to be pushing this thing. Where to the point where you don't care if you break it at all. It does not need an M.L.S. gasket. That might be the only way you need an M.L.S. gasket is if you just don't care and you're trying to push this thing and you want it to hold together for like 1 or 2 passes. That's the only reason. But a 9-second car, you don't need an M.L.S. gasket in it. I'm going to just say it. A car making 500 wheel, you don't need an M.L.S. gasket. If you do, your tune's off. That's a tune issue. There's no reason. No, not a single reason in the world. If you're under 1,000 horsepower, I'm going to say you don't need an M.L.S. gasket. Now 1,000 on up, sure, you might want that gasket. I never made that much, so I can't speak on that. But this is just common sense to me. It's my head telling me, with how things work, stuff I've seen, it's no reason. Especially on your 302 guys, Fox body guys, man. There is no reason for your heads cam intake 302, stock bottom end, or even your 347 stroker that you're going to the car show in and taking to the track once in a while. There is no reason to put an M.L.S. gasket on that engine. There isn't. None. None at all. Unless your tune's off and you just want the thing to stay together in case you have a mishap or something like that. That's the only way. And even then, I still don't see it, because Felpro gaskets, they work great. The Felpro ones that I use have worked great. I can't remember a number off the top of my head, but the only times I've had an issue is when it's my own fault. But I can't give them any type of any type of bad slurs or anything. I haven't had an issue unless it was my fault. Hopefully that clears the air for some of you guys. But you guys can do what you want to do. You don't have to listen to me. But I'm just telling you, unless you want the extra compression and you just want that thing to stay together, you can use the thin M.L.S. head gaskets to get the compression up. Other than that, I don't see a reason behind them unless you're making big power, or you're just a straight grudge racer and you want that engine to stay together for the 1 or 2 passes to set a record maybe, or to race a guy or something like that. In theory, they're great. They got great theory behind them, but I'm gonna be honest, I'll stick with my crappy junk Felpros that people don't want to use. The one comment said I would never use them gaskets. M.L.S. all the way. Makes me want to just run full speed into a wall. Hopefully forget everything I know. Maybe I can learn the idiot's way of thinking. Crazy. If I see ponies on your car and you're saying that you need M.L.S. gaskets, ponies with street tires, and you're saying you need M.L.S. gaskets, I'm sorry. That better be one nasty car when you bolt a tire on it. Just my own 2 cents. I'm sorry if I offend anyone, but I can't. That being said, guys, that's pretty much it. Hopefully this video made sense. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. I had a long couple days. Hopefully for you guys wanting to know what gaskets to use, this helps you out. You don't need no crazy head gasket. Regular Felpro will be fine. I've even seen stock, crappy replacement gaskets stay together. You know, sometimes you buy a part and it might be bad out of the box. That stuff happens here and there, but from the stuff I've seen those little kits you buy, the cheap $50 kits, I've seen them actually work decent on some average type stuff, stock style builds or whatever. 12-second cars, you know. Hit it with some nitrous and the thing goes tens, whatever, and it stays together. You don't need nothing crazy. It's my point. It doesn't have to be M.L.S. gasket. You don't need $200 or $300 worth of gaskets on your engine to go tens, or even nines, for that matter. That being said, you guys have a good one, and I'll see you guys around.